Well, hello. It's so nice to meet you, Dr. Kevin Mays of Mays Leadership. Welcome to a Life Designed YouTube channel.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much. I'm excited about our conversation today. I love the idea of living your life by design. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'm excited that our viewers are actually going to get to take a deep dive for a few minutes today into how you provide these leadership principles for people. You know, I am an executive coach primarily. I do some personal or life coaching. But it is interesting in the world of work how important leadership is. And it's almost like you're supposed to learn it by drinking water at the water cooler. And, after a while, people have come to the understanding that maybe we should train in leadership. Maybe you weren't born knowing how. And the dearth of leadership at an organization might be because no one's paying attention. So it's wonderful that you help improve the lives of all those people that you offer training and speaking engagements to, so that those leadership principles, I think, it takes the friction out of the work that's being performed by everybody. What am I supposed to be doing? When am I supposed to have it done? Do I have a leader that I can rely upon? So, yeah, let me ask you a little bit about the work you do, and then we'll
Mhm.
talk about how you've designed your own life with these leadership principles in mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, it's really interesting for me, from my perspective. Before you can lead anybody else, you have to lead yourself.
Saw that
So,
quote on your website. It's very powerful. It's like, where do we start? Oh, with me.
well, at a core level, that's it. It all begins and ends with us, with our kind of the cognitive framework we develop early on. And I like something you said. I think it's powerful that there's an expectation that if you're good at your job, you're going to be a good leader.
Mhm.
But the reality is, we'll spend our entire lives externally focused, learning a skill set, mastering a skill set, going to college, going to grad school to gain this external skill set. Then, when you show up and you can do that, they somehow think that your ability to do this, to be a good engineer or
Mhm.
an attorney, that somehow that means you're going to be good at leading. And it's two vastly different things.
Mhm.
It's really a cultural bias that always perplexes me. Like, when we want to acknowledge somebody doing a good job in getting their task done, we promote them into a totally different skill set, which I've seen folks fail miserably at because they're
It-
good at the one skill set and it doesn't equate to leading.
Well, I know as an executive coach, sometimes a challenge that a client will bring me is they want to promote me to run the team. I don't want to do that. I love what I'm doing now.
Mhm,
And
mhm, mhm.
I have my bandwidth maxed out at what I'm doing now. But now I'm supposed to have one-on-one meetings with 5 other people and mentor them or coach them. Where would I find the time? And I'm not good at that, and I don't want to become good at it. So some people understand that is not my flavor. No, thank
Mhm.
you. Others are like, well, I think I could step up, but I might need some clues. I might need some training in how to do it well. If I'm going to do it, I'd like to do it well.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And again, circling back, it starts with us understanding that cognitive framework we developed, or I think of it as, we come into the world and we have this hardware, but our software isn't fully developed. We have a brain, but our mind isn't really developed yet, our personality. And
Mhm.
we start having these experiences out of the gate in the first 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And in that time, our software gets programmed.
Mhm.
And I've seen folks push against that until I ask them to think about their birth order
Mhm.
and individuals. And I watch it with my own family. I watch it with myself. Oldest behave like oldest. Not always.
Firstborn.
Yeah.
Hello.
So what's it mean to be the firstborn? What'd you learn being the firstborn?
That I got to be a mini parent. You know,
So you
I
probably are
was,
really good at responsibility, maybe to
that's
a
right.
fault.
Organization, wrangling other people along the lines of what somebody else says has to be done. And you're right, you learn those things that your parents need just because it needs to be done if you have multiple children in the house. And so somebody has to feed and walk the dog, and somebody has to, check on the baby, and somebody has to whatever. And so you're right. Early on, we learn these things. I noticed on your website you talk about the fusion of neuroscience and contemplative wisdom. What a
Hmm.
fusion that is. So it sounds like you're leading into, wait, how did we come into the world? What did we come in with? And then maybe we pour wisdom in there somewhere.
Well, it's a very different thing than knowledge. And I see most folks will gain a lot of knowledge in their life, but not really achieve wisdom. So I think about back to that neural programming that we get in the first, I develop my software. I'm the youngest child, so I don't have rules, and I learn to be the renegade, and I don't play well in systems. I'm not the traditional one. I'm the radical revolutionary, right? And so that's beautiful. But now here I am decades later, and those same patterns are playing themselves out through me, even if it's not getting the result I want in my life.
Mhm,
And when it doesn't, so often what I find humans will do is want to blame the external world and not recognize that we're operating on DOS and we need to upgrade the software. And for me, it's like that's the contemplative wisdom part. Understanding how the brain is wired is important stuff. That's knowledge based, though I don't find a lot of people gaining wisdom out of that. They gain knowledge, and that's great, but real wisdom requires, in my mind, a deep level of presence, your ability to be here in this moment now. And then from that place, awareness, not just external awareness, but internal awareness of
mhm,
what's happening. Our subconscious mind is always aware physiologically of what's going on.
mhm,
So, and that's something I learned as I was growing up. Learned that, a boy, big boys don't cry. I'll give you
mhm,
something to cry about. Never
mhm,
let him see a sweat,
mhm,
right? So that was kind of the programming, the MO. And at some point, I remember when I was studying psychology, I remember asking my instructor, like, he was talking about gaining awareness in the therapeutic process with a
mhm,
client, and how he said you would check in with yourself. And I'm like, what on earth are you talking about? Check in. And that's what put me on a pathway
mhm,
I spent a lot of time in monasteries and monastic environments, meditation centers,
mhm,
trying to understand what is this thing? What is wisdom?
mhm.
And it's not an idea, it transcends ideas, right? It's being able to develop that platform of presence from that awareness. Then we
Mhm.
can live intentionally. But without presence and awareness, there is no intention, there is just reaction. And
Right.
for me, that's the work. If you want to be able to be in a place where you're truly designing your
Mhm,
life, your
mhm,
experience, your impact,
mhm,
it not only requires you to be intentional, but intentional intention doesn't happen unless you have the ability to come back to this moment and then to be aware of what those patterns are, what the biases are that
mhm,
we don't see, but to pull the lens off and to understand over time what that looks like.
mhm.
And then to be able to, what I find people who want to jump into intention without the awareness, they just double down on the patterns that are already there.
Mhm.
And then in doing so, often make themselves right. And I've seen executives who are really good at doing that. They've got there, so they know they're right because they're in the C-suite. But in doing so, there's a huge blind spot that they don't see. And that
Yes.
blind spot undermines them. And when they think, well, I've seen this is the warning track. When I work with an executive or CEO and they ask me to come in and work with the rest of their team, they don't need help. The rest of the team
Boy,
does.
haven't we all seen that? It's like, well, we found the problem. The problem is you.
It always goes up. It always goes up.
Well,
It's yeah.
to create a culture that
Yes.
allows for people to develop leadership skills, to identify
Mm-hmm.
emerging leaders, to identify those that are not emerging leaders. They're very good at the widgets or they're very good at the coding, and
Mm-hmm.
they are always going to be a happy cog in the wheel, and please miss me with the leadership, won't you? And others are good emerging leaders, but they do need training and skill.
The hard thing is, it's our way. Putting people in leadership position is a way of recognizing them. And everybody wants recognition, but we don't have another system of recognizing people other than promoting
Mhm.
into a different skill set.
Right.
And so now you see more and more organizations who are doing like a task operator level 2, level 3, and promoting people while
Yeah.
staying in the task realm. But
Right.
it hasn't caught on as much as it needs to, as much as it will. We have this idea that leadership is the end all and be all.
I do think that it's a big challenge today, particularly we have people working remotely. We have people that are ready to change jobs. I want this level, I want this title. If you're not going to give it to me here, I'll go
Hmm.
get it elsewhere.
Hmm.
And I think people's idea about what successful leadership looks like needs a little upgrading. What does successful leadership really look like? And we get the modern books where we read the books and we think, okay, this is from Harvard Business Review, so I'll follow these 11 tips. And that may or may not match your leadership style. It may or may not match the culture that exists in your organization.
Hmm.
And so working with somebody like you can touch base on the culture. Like, well, let's find out what's the temperature is around here, and let's see if we can figure out, are they legit, serious about bringing emerging leaders on, or is it just an initiative that makes them look good, but they don't really want to cultivate emerging leaders? Hey, young man, keep your ideas to yourself. I'm running the show, so yeah, getting a feel for the culture would help a lot as people engage you for your services to know,
That's right.
okay, I see the landscape and here's where you want to go. I've got a map to get you there.
I remember one executive I worked with who was blatant as he slammed his fist on the desk. He would decide how the culture was in the organization. And it was just so apparent that he was having such an influence on the culture that he had no awareness of.
Mhm.
He thought he was going to go to the model of shine and be able to say, oh, here's the 4 steps and this is the way it's going to be. In the
Mhm.
meantime, nobody was talking. Everybody was just sitting there nodding their head saying yes, whatever you want. And it was a dysfunctional culture. And I can tell you this 100% of the time, if I go in the front line of an organization and I find an organization where individuals are happy and excited to be there, where they communicate effectively, when they're proactive, I can 100% of the time go back up the chain and I will find all the way at the top a healthy, effective executive team.
Mhm.
And if I find dysfunction at the front line with people who don't show up, they're at each other's back, they don't trust each other, and there's poor
They're
communication.
quiet quitting. They're
Yes,
constantly looking to jump to the next paycheck.
100% of the time, I can go back up and I'll find a level of dysfunction in the executive team where they don't communicate to each other or they're in silos or what have you. There's not that level of trust. It always goes back up.
The good news I think that you bring to the forefront in the work that you do is that change is possible. If they find their turnover numbers aren't working, or you see this because there's been some consolidation in industries lately.
Mhm.
Team from company A now has to integrate with team from company B. Nobody really knows anybody. The cultures aren't quite the same. Nobody knows when the next shoe is going to drop. Am I redundant or am I sticking around? And so, kind of the marriage process of
Mhm.
engaging
Mhm.
teams from different companies or different cultures, there is a way forward when they work with someone who understands leadership.
It's absolutely key. I worked with one organization. I love it. They implemented, it was an aerospace company, implemented an ERPs. They wanted a common technology platform
Mhm.
to start. Well, they had grown by acquisition wildly to
Mhm.
the tune of like 30 companies in a
Oh,
couple of
wow.
years.
Wow.
So, in each one felt they were special and they had their own platform. So now they implemented this common across the board technology platform. The one thing they forgot was the humans who had an attachment to it and they felt like it was part of what made them successful and they couldn't figure out why the disengagement was happening, and it was all about the people and the culture. I think you're absolutely right. Well, or I've seen other organizations where, when they merge, they'll bring in the CEO from one company and then the COO from the other company, and there's two very different cultures. Folks don't know what horse to ride.
Mhm.
It's so important to be able to articulate the value system and not only articulate it, to live it, because culture isn't about the plaque on the wall,
Right.
right? It's about the way people actually exist together.
Right. It's this huge hidden permission set. It's okay to roll in Friday at 9:45 instead of 9
Mm-hmm.
o'clock. It's okay to wear jeans and a t-shirt on Friday. It's okay to work out your sick days like they're mental health vacation days. There is a culture that exists, and people pick up pretty quick about, what time it is in the neighborhood. How do things work here? I know one of the things that I've worked with, I'm confident you have too, is that sometimes the beginning of a turnaround is to turn around a team that becomes high performing. You sort of have a model, here's our beta test team. And in 3 months, they're high performing, humming along happily. you too could have this. You know,
Mhm,
like we're
mhm,
just going to show you the example. This team is high performing. Would you like your team to be like that team? We can do that for you too. So
mhm.
sometimes you start in a corner of the garden and cultivate that and let the rest of the flowers notice good things could happen if you're willing to play along, you know?
That's one of my most fun things to do is working with teams. Back in the day, a millennium ago, I did group dynamics and group therapist, and I translated that into more executive team development because I
Mhm,
just have a natural way. I think it goes back to being the youngest child. I was
mhm.
always surrounded by others who were older than me, and I had to figure out how to manage putting snow down my sister's coat in the winter without getting my face rubbed in the snow. Right, so it's like all this survival mechanism
You
turned
have
out really
creative
well.
workarounds built in.
The youngest child, right? But it really helped me, and that's you see when you look at youngest children, they're often I've seen it referred to as the charming manipulator. I don't like that. It's got a negative tinge to it, but there's something about it, right? Know how to charm and then be able to also, that's what I think about when I work with executive teams, to be able to say the thing nobody else can say in a way that doesn't put people on the defensive.
Yeah.
Because so many teams have learned to not say the thing and they talk around the issue. Especially if there's a family dynamic going on, and work with a lot of family companies, or
Yeah.
there's people who have been there 30 years and that's just the way he is. So people don't address, they talk
Mhm.
around the issues. And that's one of the fun things I think in creating that high performance team is creating an environment that wipes the slate clean and
Mhm.
allows, demands a level of honesty, and not brutal honesty where we're taking our perspective out on each other, but
Mhm.
compassionate honesty that means if we're going to elevate, we all have to pull the same direction. We all have to be transparent, be authentic, and sometimes that means we do it wrong or make mistakes, but we have to have each other's back.
I wonder if you've used assessments. I've done this where to give a fresh look, as you say, to clear the slate and give a fresh look at a team, to do a simple assessment like strength finders. It's
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes. And we only talk about what you're good at. Here's the top 5 things you're good at. So everyone is cataloged what they're bad at, you know, all the way to hell and gone.
Mm-hmm.
The one who's late, the one who talks too loud, the one that takes over the meeting, everybody's got all that nailed down. But you might not be paying as much attention to what they're good at. So when you have a third party, you know, uninterested observer, you fill out the forms and you come up with your top 5 strengths, you realize, oh, you know, John is really good at organizing those things. And this one should be doing the social media because she is actually kind of a social butterfly and she always sees the celebration and excitement about things. So you can
Mm-hmm.
shift the lens from this guy's a jerk to, you know what, he is the one who has this strength and the only one on our team with that strength. We should be shoveling that stuff in his direction if we want to maximize our team's performance. So sometimes you can do tools, right, to sort of shift those
Absolutely,
things.
100%. I think tools are so important and powerful with a team because they can reveal the hidden bias in a team's decision making process as well. And
Mhm,
I've seen teams, high level, sophisticated individuals, come together like executive teams of large companies,
mhm,
and this group think happens that they don't see. It's invisible to them, and they make decisions that end up being completely disastrous to
mhm,
the tune of like money bleeding hundreds of thousands of dollars out of one decision that was very well thought through,
mhm,
because they all have a similar archetype or a similar way of moving through the world and thinking and solving
mhm,
problems. And because of that, there's a huge hole in their logic that they don't see, and they undervalue others who have a different perspective. That diversity of thinking is
mhm.
so important.
Yeah.
I've watched it drain organizations. I watched one organization bring all the executives into the main hub
Mhm,
and their teams. They
mhm,
had 33 different regions,
mhm,
all the regional presidents and their teams to explain the new org chart,
mhm,
which was going to be condensed down to 23. They
mhm,
didn't have it all figured out, but come on in, these the best days are ahead. And
mhm,
it created a complete mutiny
mhm, mhm.
because they hadn't thought it through. So I love what you're saying when you talk about that strength, for example, strength finder.
Mhm.
It's really opening the door to positive psychology, to
Yes.
recognize that when we recognize, and it's a whole notion of gratitude as well, when we recognize what's working
Mhm.
it evokes a certain reaction in the brain, the
Mhm.
dopamine release,
Yeah.
as opposed to when we feel like we're targeted for what's not working, it
Mhm.
sends up the stress hormone and we
Mhm.
become defensive and we behave differently. I
Mhm.
think a lot about, I'm skiing a lot here in Michigan, our little hills we have.
Mhm.
When I'm skiing in the trees, you can look two areas. You can look at the trees or look at the space in between the tree. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that if you focus on the trees, you're going to ski into a tree.
We're gonna
Our
stack them.
brain, that's how our brain works, right? So
Mhm.
it's so fantastic that what you're talking about, finding out what's going right and building on that. It's like that appreciative inquiry to be able to
It
look
will
at what's
change the
going well and build it.
conversation overnight. You give a way
Yes.
to talk about the pluses instead of the normal focus that humans have on the minuses. And it gives people permission to go, yeah, that guy is good at that. Or, yeah, I'm pretty good at that thing. You should give me more, invite me to do that part.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to not close our interview here without talking about how you've designed your life. So it's so interesting that you started with psychology and
Mm-hmm.
therapy and neuroscience, and you're now applying those to the principles of leadership to the leaders of our organizations. What a journey. And can you share a little bit about how you made those choices and how you're still choosing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I started off, I love to travel.
Mm,
And in Michigan, if you want to do anything worth your salt,
mhm.
you're an engineer. That
Okay.
was that was the programming that I grew up with,
I
right?
see.
And so I studied aeronautical engineering
Mm,
and was flying airplanes because I thought makes dad happy if I'm
mm.
an engineer, but I can
An
travel.
obvious path to success.
Absolutely. And I remember it was even my school counselor said, "Oh, this is very detailed stuff. It may not, after I took an assessment, may not be the best fit for you."
Mm,
And you know what I said as a 17-year-old know-it-all kid? I know what's the best path for me. And I remember finding myself
mhm,
flying Cessnas.
mhm,
And at one point, I was utterly bored flying Cessnas. So I learned how to do different aeronautical maneuvers.
mhm,
And I would pull the wheel back until the horn would go off, the stall horn, then kick the rudder, and the plane would roll over upside down, and you're in a weightless state. It was tremendous. And I remember doing it multiple times in a row one day, and you're upside down, hanging there, and everything's floating around the cockpit. And I'm watching this, I'm spiraling towards this lake. Cessnas are designed to be stable. If you take the hand off the wheel, they'll come back to straight and level. But I
mhm.
overcorrected. I
Oh,
came out of this upside down, and the only way out was through. So I had to pull the wheel back, and I'm diving straight at the ground. And this thing happens they call gray out, as gravity's pulling all the blood out of your head, and I'm pulling the wheel back, and I'm barreling towards the trees, and the stall horn's going out. And there's the Cessnas are designed to never go above a certain speed. So I'm in the never exceed speed, and I'm skating just above the top of the trees. And I had this aha moment. Kevin, this is not the career path for you. And
you're,
that's when I realized I don't have to do what I should. I can do what I want to. And I
mhm,
landed that airplane. I
mhm,
survived, literally laid on the ground with my arms out, and then sold my car, bought a motorcycle, put a backpack on, and drove from Michigan out to the West Coast, where I ran out of money. My motorcycle broke down, and I didn't know anybody for 2,000 miles. Back before the days of cell phones, and
mhm,
there was a moment when I was completely without anything. And I was in my little pup tent on the California coast, looking over. It was a rainy day, and I could hear and see the sea lions below me. And I was at this total kind of the bottom of the pit. Like, what did I do? How did I get here? This is like, what are you gonna do?
whose
Just
idea was this?
yeah, total point of like depression and anxiety. And I remember sitting there watching off in the distance the rain and the clouds and this little flash of lightning on the horizon, and something shifted in me. And I realized, no, it was complete. As the old song goes, freedom is nothing left to lose. And I realized, oh, at this point, everything that happens is up to me. I have no excuses, nobody to fall back on. I can lay down in the ditch and wallow and complain and die, or I can get up and do something. And
Mhm.
oh my goodness, I ended up that summer, I was in right outside of Pebble Beach in Carmel, house with a
Beautiful.
hot tub on the ocean, stuff that never would have happened had I not completely thrown myself beyond my comfort zone, beyond anything I knew that was possible. I realized in those moments the universe has ways that are beyond anything I can know. The
Mhm.
universe is miraculous. And when you allow yourself to step into that void,
Mhm.
amazing things happen. So now fast forward decades, and I'm leaving. I helped build a leadership institute in North Carolina.
Mhm.
And when I was time to go, my wife and I decided to move back to Michigan. And I was going to, instead of working for a company, work for myself,
Mhm.
all in one fell swoop. We went to Michigan, bought a house, went back, sold the house, quit the job, packed the truck. My wife stayed home with 2 kids, and I started my own business. And I said, this is only going one direction, like burning the boats, right? The
That's
old story
right.
of
Burn
burning the
the
boats.
ships. Mhm.
Yeah, I burned the ships. And I'm like, I told myself, I've been here before. I know how this works out. Don't
Mhm.
freak out.
Mhm.
Don't let my mind get the better of me.
Mhm.
The universe is an amazing, resilient, infinite, infinite place. Just stay the course, be helpful,
Mhm.
right? There's some basic values that I had to be true to. But I knew that if I just stayed on that path, amazing things would happen and just try to be helpful. And it's amazing. It's been 10 years now, and I
Mhm.
find myself continually being able to help more and more organizations, more and more leaders, more and more businesses to grow and scale. And it's just
Yeah, when you
my life's work.
hire someone to help make a change in your company or a coach to make a change in your life or
Mhm.
your business, you want to talk to people who've been there and come back.
Yes.
You
Yes.
really want to talk to people like I've scuffed my shoes and
Hmm.
the wounds have healed, but I remember them. And I
Hmm.
want to do a small round of applause for your amazing, resilient wife. We burned the ships, we moved out of town, and we just rolled the dice that this business was going to work out. So good for her to support you.
Oh man, she's behind every good man is an amazing woman.
Well, designing your life is possible and living with leadership principles, absolutely possible. It's been so nice to learn more about you. Tell me, how do people get a hold of you if they're ready to hire you to train their people
I
or come
am
to your events?
I'm happy to be helpful in any way possible.
Mhm.
So easy, going to my website, Kevin at Mays Leadership. I'm Kevin Mays. So if you go to maysleadership.com, you'll find my website. But I am so receptive to any way I can be helpful. You can just email me, Kevin. Oh, that's the email, Kevin at maysleadership.com,
I'll
or
make
my,
sure to
my
put it
website.
in the show notes.
Yeah, okay. Or my website. And I'll have all kinds of I try to put as together as many free things that you can download as possible.
Mhm.
7 steps to grow your team, how to grow your business, how to manage your consciousness, all this stuff I'm doing. I'm really always looking. If there's a demand, I'll put something together to help individuals. I remember in 4th grade, we had to write the things that were important to us. And the one thing was just be helpful. And I realized that's been my rallying cry for my life. And we're all in it together. If we can
We
just be
are
helpful
all in
for
it
each other,
together.
yeah, everybody
I,
wins.
I love this energy that happens when you have two willing people say, hey, well, what can we do together?
Mm-hmm.
I recently had a client tell me that he's in a new role in a new company. And he was noticing that there was a team that was struggling about something. It was very obvious to him what to do. And he's smarter than he realizes. He just sort of puts his head down and works.
Mm-hmm.
But he's talking to this person and he says, I think I have a way out of the kind of snag you're in. They're like, really? So kind of back of the envelope, here's the 3 stages, here's what you do. Ping me if you need some help. The guy came back 30 days later and said, we followed your instruction. It's working perfectly now. Thank you so much. And the client was taken aback. Really? I really helped you that much? For him, it was just like tossing off a couple of ideas because he's
Mm-hmm.
been there, because he's done it. But for the person that he helped, it was revolutionary. And so it's really good to have someone like you on tap for when those times come. Okay, so I'll
Mm-hmm.
make sure one of your free giveaways is in the notes too. And I
Yeah.
encourage the audience to go visit, maysleadership.com and find out more about Kevin. And if your organization has some leaders that might need a little tune up or a reset, Kevin's
Mm-hmm.
the one to do it. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to see you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so
All
much.
right,
And
good.
thank you to everyone. Good luck on your path, on your journey, because it
Yes,
is a journey.
let's design happy, wonderful lives together.
Yes.
Thanks so much.